welcome to Medicinal Mass Media. This is Demonstryde. With us today, we have Witsitgetsit and Dogs Are Gods. This is a debate on the Constitution and the Second Amendment. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Witsit.
All right, how's it going? So the format, I guess, is going to be Dogs is going to go first with a 5-minute intro, then Demonstryde 5-minute intro, open dialogue, closing statements from Dogs first, then closing statements from Demonstryde, and then Q&A from Tartaria server and the chat. So simple enough. And I would say just try to be respectful. Don't interrupt each other. Obviously, some interruptions are probably inevitable, but hopefully we can just keep it pretty respectful to the point that I don't have to do too much. So if you guys are ready, then go for it. Dogs, take it away.
Yeah, hey guys, how you doing? Right. So I think we're going to talk about the Second Amendment. As I understand it, the Second Amendment allows every US citizen with some restrictions and some regulations access to firearms. Now, I think this is an incredibly bad idea for the longevity, safety, and the ability of Americans to do, I think, the most fundamental thing, which is have freedom and have the ability to lead a good life. Now, what I propose is adding an amendment that seems to be easier than trying to change an existing amendment. I'm not even sure if you can change an existing amendment, but you can definitely add amendments, and those amendments can override previous ones. That's what we saw in the case of slavery being overridden in the US. It was the addition of the 13th or 14th Amendment. Anyway, so I'd suggest that an amendment is added that says something along the lines of no man should be able to access a firearm without either first registering as part of a militia group or by abiding by the restrictions of the federal and or state governments. Now, I think that's pretty simple. It allows the militias to be there, which I think is going to be the sticking point for most Americans, this understanding that the Second Amendment is there to ensure some form of freedom against the tyranny of the government, which I totally disagree with there ever being a chance of the American government being overthrown by the population again with its gigantic military, but that's besides the point. It would allow states to come up with some individual set of laws, which I think is another big sticking point. This idea of the gap between the state and the federal government in the US is pretty important. You should be able to demarcate between the powers of the federal and the powers of the state. And it would also allow the federal government to do some basic set of laws and regulations that every person should have to meet in order to get access to the firearms that are killing way too many Americans. Like, this isn't a problem that happens in Australia or in Europe. It's a problem that happens in like Nicaragua, some really bad African countries, and just generally very undeveloped and unrefined countries around the world. So next, some of the laws I think that should be added by the federal government, assuming the Second Amendment has some form of change added to it by another amendment. So licensing should be required by all people, and part of that licensing should be a need, like a necessity to own a firearm. So I'd say that having a large tract of land somewhere with pests on it is a damn good reason to own a firearm, like a long arm. I can't think of any good reason to own a handgun unless it's for like a security gig somewhere or like an armed guard somewhere. The next would be mandatory weighting, red flag laws, sales logs for any sale, including private sales between family members, which I know that you're technically meant to do, but it's an incredibly bad, lax system. All of that should be registered with the ATF. And the ATF should, in fact, be allowed to come into your home at any time with like 24 hours notice and just go look to see if your guns are safely stored. I think that's something that most Americans should just bite the bullet, give up, and just do. Even though I know that one's a sticking point. I know you're not going to agree to it, and that's fine. And the militia part, I think the militia is a really, really interesting thing we can go down in this chat. The idea that you could have a registered militia with the government can't impose on that militia, but the militia needs to provide proof that it's A, trying to uphold the Constitution, B, it's non-violent unless there's a need, and C, that the firearms stored for that militia, which would be the only case in which like semi-automatic or fully automatic firearms or handguns are allowed, is if they're stored with that militia site or in some central militia site or some gun range the militia has hired. That will allow people to train to defend the country if they really want to. It'll allow them to buy the guns that they want to play with in these gun ranges. But it'll also mean that there's just no chance of them walking down the street and shooting up a mosque, which is a big problem in the US. Now, I think the final sticking point, what Demonstryde will want to talk about a lot, is the idea of personal safety and requiring a firearm for your personal safety. I can understand that just on an individual level. It makes sense that if you've got a firearm, you'll feel safe and you'll be able to take care of your family. But at the same time, everyone around you now has this added background threat, the potential for you to miss if you're shooting at someone who is attacking you, or to just flip out one day, because you never know, it could happen. Just flip out one day and shoot 20 people for no reason. That can happen. And the idea of like the only thing that takes down a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, sure, that kind of makes sense, but let's restrict the good guys that can have guns, because there's no telling when that good guy will turn into a bad guy with a gun and shoot 20 people in a Walmart or something. Now, we can get into some statistics about gun control if you want, but I'll leave that to the open conversation. That's within the US, the data shows that. Outside of the US, the data shows that. It will reduce homicides, obviously. It'll reduce child deaths between 1 and 19. The leading cause of death with children is firearm related. And it will even just reduce the corruption and the extreme aggression that the police within the US hold to the citizenry. Because if they're not looking at every situation going, there's a gun here, so I'm justified in shooting, then hopefully they won't do that.
Well, I think that's a solid 5 minutes. I forgot to think about timing it. All right.
Did you get everything you wanted to say out, Dogs?
Yeah, that's enough. Like I blab it on. There's 20 different things we can talk about, so that's a good start.
All right. So I reworded the Second Amendment for you so it would make sense in your mind. A well-made cake being necessary for the completion of a birthday party. The right of the people to keep and bear ovens shall not be infringed. At no point is it saying that your right to bear arms, you must make a cake or you must be in a militia. So for that, I guess there's a little bit of a disagreement. Why do I carry a weapon? It's because my eyes have been opened at one point or another in my existence to the brutality of humanity. I choose not to let myself or the people I love around me become a victim again if I can do anything about it. The majority of Americans, are unaware of their rights, the Constitution, or even understanding about guns. Do I believe people should be more informed? Yeah, I do. I believe training should start at an early age. We're around guns. I don't think we'll ever not be around guns. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna be here more to defend it versus expounding on it. We can open up to open debate here in a second, but I did want to point out that there is in place a way to amend the amendments in the Constitution should we want to do that. So those are there. But you said you wanted to bring up some statistics. Do you have any specifically you'd like to bring up? I do have some here.
Well, yeah. So the first one is just that, let's see. Yeah, the leading cause of death among 1 to 19-year-olds in the United States is firearm-related injuries. So I think that accounts for something like 22,000 deaths.
Okay. All right. I did have a thing. I can't share it here for some reason. The Australian survey. All right. So let's see here. There's a survey done between 8,414 households and 18,694 persons in Australia. and it was over a 12-month period. The Australian survey produced an estimated crime rate which ranged from 2 to 16 times as high as the rate based on police records for specific crimes. And it was done for people 15 or older. The U.S. survey used for the similar method is based on 2-month call and 2-month recall periods rather than the single 12-month. Comparisons of the two nations' crime rates showed surprisingly that Australia had a significantly higher motor vehicle theft rate than the United States. So we can narrow in on, I guess, just gun deaths, but to say that like Australia is safe in any means, it isn't necessarily.
No, it is.
One of the biggest crimes you have in Australia is sexual assault, and I believe it's worse than America per capita.
Yeah, that's sexual assault, not violent sexual assault. So violent sexual assault is physically holding someone down and assaulting them. Sexual assault, because Australia has a large binge drinking culture, is things like you'll get a girl drunk and then you'll sexually assault her. So that's why there's that discrepancy.
Okay, so should we regulate the alcohol use in Australia to stop you guys from raping people?
Yeah, it's already regulated, and we should. Well, I don't think regulation would help with that per se because it's an addiction problem. So I'd say that we should maybe look to find ways to rehabilitate and maybe teach people how to drink alcohol responsibly. But yeah, we can regulate alcohol. I got no problem with that.
I would like just to point out, if you guys can't share screen but you need to, you could technically drop in the chat and I could throw it up.
Okay, let's see here. I have
So what do you think about the suicide rate associated with guns?
all right. So a gun is going to be the easiest way to kill yourself. So to like what is the rate of suicide and what's the method in Australia? What's the best way to kill yourself?
In Australia, I'm fairly sure the leading cause of suicides would be something like pills. It would be the non-firearm related suicide.
Mm-hmm. Which way do you think is the best way to kill yourself?
Definitely the one that's slower and that you can go to a hospital for, and they can pump your stomach and you can survive, and then you can get counselling and not try to kill yourself in the future.
Gotcha.
That's the best way.
We might disagree on whether or not
right?
somebody should be allowed to, whether or not somebody should be allowed to end their life, respectively. When you said that we should only be allowed to have guns. I'm sorry?
You'd agree with me that people shouldn't be able to just arbitrarily end their life with a thought. Like if someone was having a really bad day, their dog had just been run over, they crashed their car, their mother called them and said, I've got lung cancer. They're feeling really, really down that day. They have like too much to drink and they just go, maybe I should kill myself. You agree with me that that's not something they should be allowed to do, right?
Suicide does happen kind of like spontaneously. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think we should. That's a mental health debate, and I think we should have more mental health in this country. When you say that you should be required to be in a militia to be able to own a gun, what do you think about the militias having the kind of artillery to fight against a tyrannous government?
I'd say we should restrict it to just firearms, so it shouldn't be any sort of like, artillery, any sort of tanks, anything like that, just firearms. Because I don't think there's any point to the civilians trying to fight off the US government. It'll just lead to mass casualties.
Well, they wouldn't be civilians at that point. They'd be a militia. Let me read the an undoctored version of the Second Amendment for you. A well-regulated militia, comma, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, comma, shall not be infringed. So it's being necessary for the security of a free state. It's right there. So you think that we shouldn't keep our country the way we like? I don't quite understand that part. You're saying our government's set and it's just going to be the way it is? Like, even if it becomes tyrannous, we just got to roll over?
I'd say leave the country if it becomes tyrannous. If there is a government that ever has control of the military and is tyrannical towards the people, all they're going to be able to do is kill themselves. That's it. They're going to fight the US military, which is just going to mass kill American citizens. So I don't see there's any point in the current framework. Maybe if the US military was rolled back largely, to the people actually fighting back. It would just lead to mass deaths, nothing would be accomplished.
Okay. I mean, if we had the kind of artillery to fight against them, it'd look a lot like Ukraine and Russia, I think.
Well, they're different countries, right?
They are different countries, you're right. But one is
So that's an invading
tyrannous and
force
trying to.
within your country.
Well, one of them believes that they are still part of their country and they're gonna, overbowl them. One of the points you made: no access to firearms. Though you must need a firearm. Let me ask you: if we were to take away all of the guns from every law-abiding citizen today, when do you think at any point I wouldn't be in danger of a firearm from some criminal?
Yeah, that question doesn't really work with me because I don't think we should take away all the guns today from law-abiding citizens. I just believe the restrictions in the new guns and then the slow removal of guns over time. Because you're trying to present this question as if we can just take away all the law-abiding citizens' guns. But the criminals, they've still got their guns, so congratulations, criminals are just going to do whatever the hell they want. Everyone's suddenly in more danger. But what I'm trying to present is a case whereby you restrict the access for the criminals and then you start removing the guns from society, which restricts the access further.
Right. So at any point I could use that argument like, I'm in America. There's no point at which I'm not going to need a gun to defend myself from violent criminals out there. I wouldn't need to be a security officer. I wouldn't. Every single American would have that.
Start restricting guns.
I mean, but we do restrict
where do you think
gun
the criminals? Well, yeah, but where do you think the criminals get the guns currently?
Currently, I don't know, the black market. Where is that supplied from? Ultimately, the gun manufacturers. Do you believe that the gun manufacturers should stop selling guns? Like, you could really nip it in the bud right there.
Yeah, that's exactly. If there's no private market for things like Glocks, is Glock going to keep selling millions of guns a year?
Yeah, I don't know. They don't have the military contract right now, so no, they probably would look elsewhere. But you
exactly.
say
So how would a criminal get their hands on a Glock, like a new Glock, if Glock isn't selling to that private market of legal private citizens?
Mm-hmm. It'd probably just get a hold of one of those government programs like what was it, the Go Fast program from Obama, where they put GPS trackers in guns and sold them on the black market and they ended up killing people. So government regulation necessarily isn't the key.
I think it was Fast and Furious, actually.
Yeah.
Or something.
When you say,
but anyway, the problem with that is that those were all legally bought guns that they were being, I think, shipped into Mexico, which is another good point, is that the ability for guns to be bought so easily in the US is also harming Canada and Mexico, because it's so easy to just go buy a gun in the US, whack it in your boot, go for a drive across the border. Sure, you might get checked, you might not, who knows. With Mexico, there's entire sections of the border where people will illegally cross with all sorts of goods. And they can take these guns back to Mexico. They can take the ammunition back to Mexico. And it makes Mexico a more dangerous place, which fuels the drugs, which fuels the violence, which comes back to the US.
Right. So their regulations on their free state didn't seem to help it. It seems like what you would like to do is globally change this, not just in America. Because you say you want Americans to be more free, but you also want the government to come in and check their home. I would say that right there is a violation of, I believe, my Fourth Amendment. Let's see. Yeah, that's my Fourth Amendment right there.
Well, it would be if they did it without it, say, being necessary to get a license. So you sign your license, you agree to the terms of your license. So if you go out and get a gun license, with that it states your gun must at all times, when not in use, be held in a safe with a separate ammunition lockbox in that safe. And you must consent to the ATF being able to make sure that your firearms are stored properly. And that's part of the license for that firearm. Or for getting a firearm. Then
you believe that
to
get to freedom, you must have regulations on top of regulations stamping you down to press you into this hole of freedom?
Yeah, because we don't have inherent freedoms. We have freedoms as afforded to us by the societies we live in. Otherwise, people can just violate other people's freedom at the drop of a hat. But if you have a government, then the violation of your freedom by other people is restricted heavily through laws, policing, and regulations.
Well, I'm looking up some of the statistics here. Burglaries and robberies. You are ranked first for burglaries and fourth for robberies. Do you think that these might be deterred if the criminals believed that the house or the car they're going to steal has somebody who's able to defend themselves versus somebody who's not? Like, let's
Not really. I think it'd
take
just
your
give
position where
them
somebody's
a reason
trained.
to go and buy a gun. So these are now homicide.
Part of your argument earlier was that the cops are going to be more afraid because everyone has got guns. So wouldn't the criminals also be more afraid if everybody had the right to defend themselves?
Yes, but they'd be so afraid that every time they want to go burgle a house, they take a gun with them, because they're still going to go out and they're still going to rob. Also, I'd love to see this source for this number one for burglaries and robberies. Is it a survey again?
Okay. It's Nation Master Crime Stats. Just share the link here.
Drop it into the Discord chat.
Discord or in the private chat?
Oh, yeah, the private one.
To the right here, we have a private chat. I'll put it there. Yeah, it's in there.
Wow, I missed that you had done that.
That's all right.
Share it.
Cool. Anyway, I think that if you were to give everyone the access to guns in Australia suddenly, then what you'd see is the criminals would also then get access to guns and they'd start robbing houses with all those guns.
Right. So it's like you scroll down. It's like a page and a half down. You get to violent crime, violent rapes, and then burglaries and robberies here. So it looks like there are still violent gun homicides as well. So even your
how many violent gun homicides are there in Australia per year?
Let's see.
It's 3 versus 32 per 100K, 11 times more than Australia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm still. I would like you to make an argument for why I should give up my gun right now, to make myself more free. Like, what can you make an argument for that?
Well, I don't think you should give it up right now. Everything I'm advocating for is something that should happen over time. So over 10 years, in 10 years' time, maybe you should give your gun back. That's what I mean.
Okay.
Or you should have to.
Some of the things I guess I can get on board with,
and not be able to purchase new ones.
Okay, some of the things I guess I could get on board with would be more regulation in the sense of sales. Like I agree with that. Like, let's record who we're selling guns to. That should be tracked. I have no problem with that. I think training should also be for carrying a pistol. You do have to do training, but I don't think it's good enough. But at no point do I think my house should be undefended in the United States of America. I just cannot see a justification for that.
Well, the justification is that the overall violent crime rate goes down. So it's one thing, like, if my house is burgled, I'm insured. I'll be okay at the end of the day. Like, the worst that'll happen is I'll steal some electronics, I'll steal like maybe some cash, I've got some jewelry, that's it. But if they break in and I have a gun and they have a gun, suddenly one of us is dying, right?
Mm-hmm. What if they break in and you're there, right? And neither of you have guns and you're just overpowered and you have no right to protect yourself. You have no way to protect yourself. You have violent criminals invading your house.
Then I get the shit beaten out of me, maybe I get stabbed. It's very rare that you actually die from something like that. Like, it's 13 times, you're 13 times less likely to die from a stabbing if you present to an emergency room than if you get shot, right?
This is a statistic that you're willing to gamble with. I mean, I don't know if you ever had guns or anything like that.
Because I'm talking about societal change, not individual change.
Okay.
So throughout
Yeah,
history, the history of humanity, right, it has only gotten better as government regulation has increased. So I know you guys like to disagree, and there's a lot of this idea that there's a lot of stats that just don't matter. But like crimes down, violent crimes down. Sure, suicides are up in a lot of places. That's a bad thing we should look at next. Some drug use is up in a lot of places. But overall, things are getting better. There's less war. Even with the war in Ukraine, there's less war worldwide. And the best countries on earth for this sort of thing, for like crime, education, healthcare, even suicides, they all seem to be the advanced Western countries that restrict guns, right?
right. So in your mind, civilians, just the regular old pink and brown and fluffy people should just do whatever the government says with their weapons. What happens when a government becomes tyrannous? I know you said it before, you should just leave the country. Is everyone going to be able to leave a country if it becomes tyrannous and you have no way at all to defend yourself? Will you be able to leave Australia if your government becomes tyrannous?
No. But the other option is that I pick up a firearm and I get shot in the face by an Australian military member who's been instructed by the tyrannous leader. I achieve nothing at that point except to die with some vague idea that I'm a hero. Like, how are you going to take out a fortified structure with your small arms?
with my pistol, yeah, I'm probably not going to. Yeah.
Awesome.
Maybe.
So what's the largest caliber you can get access to easily?
Probably 7.62 by 7.62 or 5.56.
Mm-hmm. How far will that penetrate into a solid concrete wall?
So is my government hiding behind a solid concrete wall, and this is how I'm going to defeat the tyranny?
Well, no, they come out in tanks as well and planes.
Mm-hmm.
They shoot you from a distance with drones.
Right. I guess. So is all of the war going to be done with drones then? I guess in that case, we shouldn't have any military. We should just have a robotic armed division with just drones and missile strikes, so that we take away the human aspect of it. Because otherwise, there will be people on, with boots on the grounds. There will be person to person. Like, it's not just you're going to be overrun. Like, I still don't see that happening. A government, it has to stretch out.
Resistance will pop up and they'll drone strike it. That's it. You'll have a group of people that will meet and they'll go, hey, we're going to go fight this tyrannical leader, and then they'll get drone struck.
Yeah, that's why Russia's winning right now in Ukraine, right?
Well, no, that's because Ukraine has a military with military operations, a military leadership.
I mean, it's not.
And US intelligence and British intelligence and APCs and tanks and planes.
Right.
And missile
it wasn't
launches.
Just the military, though, that was fighting back against these. It was guerrilla groups and people with, just a rifle on their back. They would go out and they would booby trap shit and poison people with soup and take out other troops. I guess the argument is maybe
the Kherson offensive alone shows that it was the military and not the people who did this. Russia would take over an area, and then Ukraine's military would have to come in and take it back, even though there were people in that area that may do some guerrilla-style warfare. Those people weren't taking back those areas. It was the military having to come in and beat the Russian military to military. And even the people that were doing these guerrilla warfare tactics, they were ending up in the military, they were registering in the military, they were getting weapons from the military, and they were becoming part of the military. So you could say it might even be reasonable, this militia thing. The reason why I think militias should be included is that it's reasonable that if anyone was to attack the US citizenry should be able to join up with the military. And sure, if you've got like a, semi-auto AR-15, if you rock up to the military with that and a whole heap of your own ammunition, you say, hey, I'm here to fight, then that's a good thing. But trying to fight against someone who has like years of training and the entire might of the US
I can get one of those. What's to say that I don't have one right now? Why would that be excluded? I mean, we can own AR-15s, we can own AK-47s. This is something I could go buy right now.
So what reason would you go buy one of those? What's the need?
Well, they're fucking badass and fun to shoot. Second would be home defense. I Man, I still don't see. All you're arguing right now is that I should own a RPG. Like, honestly, you're convincing me more and more that I need to get a mortar launcher, because that would be more beneficial to the militia I join.
No, I'm giving you an out so you can go and buy your badass things without having to store them in your home and it going and cause one of the, 647 mass shootings the US had in 2022 alone?
Right. So if somebody's shooting around me, you want me to have nothing and just allow it to happen. Like, I don't ever see what you're thinking about,
But
where it's a slow draw and nobody has guns. This is never going to happen. I don't see the
how do you
argument
not get
for
this,
that.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
The argument is so many of these mass shootings, particularly the very brutal ones we see at schools and like mosques and things, they come from people legally purchasing firearms, ridiculous firearms. Like the guy that went over to New Zealand and shot 50 people in New Zealand at mosques. He got his firearm because New Zealand has lax firearm laws compared to Australia. He was an Australian that went to a country where he could get, I think it was an AR-15. He could get one of them so he could do this mass killing at these mosques. He didn't do it in Australia. He did it somewhere where he could get access to the guns. So you being in the crowd with your whatever sidearm you've got, and some guy coming in and starting to shoot up that crowd, sure, you might be able to get a couple of pops off. You might even like stop him halfway through a mass shooting. But the problem is that you having access to your gun means that he also has access to his gun. He wouldn't be able to do the mass shooting in the first place if the firearms were restricted.
I agree with that restriction. There may be regulations we could put on it. The healthcare in America here is horrific. Like I said, there needs to be a stricter regulation for carrying, like open carry, concealed carrying. It's not there. I agree. Yeah, we could do something about that. But I still don't see
like, these kids, like the Columbine kids. They just asked a friend of theirs to do a straw purchase to get two of the guns that they use for Columbine. That's all it takes. There was one of the kids that did the mass. I think the Evolve shooter. He just got a gun from his parents. He was just like, there's a gun lying around. Go get it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there are incompetent gun owners. Yeah, there are incompetent gun owners. I don't disagree with that. But just because there are incompetent people doesn't mean you restrict the freedoms of everybody else.
Yeah, this is what like humanity has agreed works. So yeah, that's exactly what you do. If there's incompetent people, and the incompetence of those people means that there's mass death or some extreme negative to the society, then society should restrict it. We have this from everything from like in Australia, I have to give all my employees a thing called superannuation, and that's 10% that I add on top of their wage that I pay to a superannuation fund. And that's because we didn't want to have to pay for all these old people with no money. America did the Social Security, right? So when they get old, we pay for them and they just pay into the system. We take some of their money, put it into a fund, and they get it back later because we've agreed that all these old people draining everyone's pockets is a bad thing. So we've come up with a regulation that stops the bad thing, even though we're having to get them to pay into the fund.
Yeah, sure. We need more of that as well here. But my freedom is written in this Constitution. It's defended in this Constitution. We have a way to go about changing it. It's not happening right now. Do you think that we should change how we amend the Constitution?
No.
Okay, so it seems like this process is working. At least my freedoms are still intact.
I think what the founding fathers didn't see happening was the amount of bias and rhetoric that media would have, or that even these independent like streamers and YouTubers and stuff, like the Stephen Crowders, the Tim Pools, people like that, who tout the need to own a gun to everyone all the time, constantly. And then there's this rhetoric around it, which means that there's no political will to actually change gun laws for, that, what is it, 3/5 and 3/4 and 2/3 for either the state or Congress changes. There's no will for that because there's this rhetoric of you should own a gun. It's patriotic. It's defending your
Well,
sovereign
no,
rights.
I would
etc.,
just I would have to disagree with that. A lot of the people I talk to don't know what guns are. They've never seen a gun. They're afraid of guns. Like 9 out of 10 people I encounter in America don't know anything about guns.
But anyone who's politically motivated would look at a gun and they'll either be, the Democrat that goes, yeah, we should have some restrictions, but you're never going to have the majority of Democrats saying, yeah, we should have the restrictions. Or there'll be Republicans who will be like, no one is restricting my guns ever, ever, ever. There's that aggressive push. You never see you'll see some Democrat groups that will be like, we need to get rid of guns. We need to get rid of guns. But you will see every Republican universally will go, no gun laws, no gun restrictions. I need my guns. And that's the rhetoric. So this is my conspiracy, is that there is groups of people in the United States that push the population to be armed and stop gun control regulations because it leads to a more oppressed and less safe society.
You're talking about the NRA being the government there. Yeah, I agree there shouldn't be money in politics. I think that might address some of those issues right there.
No, I'm talking about like large media groups like Fox. If you've got shootings every day and Fox News's entire viewership is based on fear, OAN's the same. If you've got this fearful population, they'll look at your fear-based media and go, we should be scared all the time. We are scared all the time. So we're going to listen to the people that tell us that we should be scared all the time.
So are you telling me that we should be afraid of the guns because the media says it, or we should be, because both sides are said, like you could watch, CNN and they're saying, look at all these gun deaths. We need to stop high capacity magazines. I've heard that over and over, like that's going to actually stop something. And that's coming from, the far left. Like, you're right. They're not saying take guns away completely, just curtail them to the point where it becomes useless. But that doesn't actually stop anything. I could have 20 magazines with 5 rounds in each and do a clip drop, and it doesn't change anything. I'm going to still get the same amount of fire rate out. It really doesn't. It doesn't.
It does. For you, it wouldn't change anything because you've practiced that, fast drop and swap. But for some kid who just picks up a gun and wants to go shoot up his school, it will change a lot. If he doesn't have that experience with a firearm before, all he needs to do is make sure there's a round in the chamber and then just keep pulling the trigger.
Well, all he needs to do is make sure he's got negligent
15, 30 rounds out.
Yeah.
But how do you weed out the negligent from the responsible? Like, what system would be in place for that?
Education. My kids are well versed in, just what guns are.
So
don't fucking touch them. Always assume that they're loaded. Never point them at something you aren't willing to destroy. Know what's behind your target. I think. Do you want there should be more education?
Do you want the government to enforce education on every American about guns?
No, but I think it would be worth it to have more constitutional education in our schools in America to back up the rights that we have. The
Constitution and gun safety are different things. The Constitution says these are your rights.
We used to have gun
education says this is how you should treat guns.
Yeah, not but like maybe 25 years ago or so, they used to have guns in schools. Like, people would go to gun class. They would have a .22 long rifle, and they would train at school. They would learn about gun safety at school. And I don't recall any statistics showing mass shootings at schools because the guns were there. It seemed like education was the thing that kept people from committing these atrocities.
Well, no, the reason there weren't school shootings back then was because it required someone to break that barrier and then become a celebrity for doing it.
Right. Well, again, it's going to be mental health that is causing people to pick up a gun and harm another person. If you take away the guns, this mental health is always going to be there. We're just going to have people picking up hammers and hurting people.
Well, yeah, but you can survive.
How do you regulate violence, though?
You can survive being hit by a hammer easily. You can't survive getting shot by a gun. as easily. So that's the
Okay.
difference, right? So if someone comes at me with a hammer, I'm a big dude. I'll survive that, right? But if someone comes at me with, the Glock, I'm not going to survive that, right? If you take away all the Glocks and leave the hammers, sure, some people might still die of hammers, but it will be such an insignificant amount compared to the amount of people that die of guns.
Right. So you're a lot of the ends justify the means. Thanos had it right.
Well, the problem is that the Thanos snap was taking away people's lives. This isn't taking away people's lives. It's taking away something that you admitted you just get because it's badass.
No, I don't just get it because it's badass. I own a gun to protect myself and my family. I live in America. It's required.
Well, it's not required. It's something that America has.
I believe
that a lot of people go out and get, but it's not actually
there are
required.
certain areas I wouldn't feel safe if I didn't know I was protected. And unfortunately, in my home is one of them. Like, I don't know if you've had much violent things happen to you, but I have. My eyes have been open. I understand what humanity is, and I'm not going to be a victim. And
I did security outside clubs for 12 months. Yeah. So
I'm trained in martial
no
arts and hand-to-hand combat as well.
No vests, nothing. Barely even trained. I'm just a big dude outside of clubs in Australia. The worst that had happened, someone take a swing at me, and then they're drunk, so you just slap them away, and it's all good. A gun in that situation.
Yeah, I'm not going to shoot at somebody just because they're fighting with me.
Change.
Okay. Yeah, I just I don't see a time when I don't see a time at all in the near future, even in the distant future, where there aren't going to be guns in America. Like you said, there's people fighting for the culture of gun rights. It's so baked into America that is what America is. So what you're saying is America should not be America, and if not, because it becomes tyrannous, just leave the country, right?
Culture changes. It's time to change culture. That's it. And the people should be doing that. It should be Americans who start going, well, maybe everyone should have access to firearms. Maybe we should start restricting them. That's how you change the culture. And then step by step by step, it could take 10 years, it could take 30 years, it could take 50 years. Who cares? So long as the entire time, the amount of gun deaths, the amount of gun suicides, the access to guns is going down. The police are more effective at dealing with the actual criminals because the criminals aren't as easy to fight back against the police. It doesn't matter. So long as the culture is slowly changing and that there's some improvement over time, then, there's no reason not to pursue this except for your own, internal feelings that you need to be safe.
Well, what about proposing AI robotic officers that are responding to people with known guns? In California, they've enforced Boston Scientific robots or the like to have guns attached to them. So now we've removed that fear of a police officer being gunned down. Does that assuade any of that?
What? I'm not worried about the police being shot.
Well, that was part of your argument.
I'm worried about them being effective, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying is like with the AI robots being able to do police work, that robot doesn't give a shit if you got a gun or not.
I think that that's such a tiny edge case that will never come to fruition in the US, or at least not within our lifetime. So I don't really see engaging with that hypothetical. But if we get to the point where Boston Dynamic dogs with guns strapped to their heads are enforcing the laws in the US, then like all of this is moot. There's no reason to talk about gun laws because the Boston Dynamic AI dogs with facial recognition can just know if someone's about to do a shooting with the precog machines wandering in and bark bullets at people.
Yeah, but that doesn't stop somebody hurting me that isn't, a cop or a fucking Boston Scientific dog. Like this. So
why would the Boston Scientific dog hurt you? What are they going to do?
That's what I'm saying. I'm not worried about that. What we were talking about is that everybody having guns is making the police forces less effective, and I'm saying there are steps that can be taken to take that completely out. Also, don't be a cop if you can't fucking handle it. Don't join the police force if you're going to be a pussy.
they can join the police force and they can be just average guys that have good intentions, that can be good cops. But you're on the force in some of these areas for even 6 months, and you've seen multiple shootings, multiple overdoses, multiple stabbings, multiple domestic violence. You've had criminals with Porsches and like cash flowing out of their pockets just wave you off because you can't find anything to lock them up. All of this wears on them over time. And a lot of this is facilitated by things like guns.
Yeah, I just haven't seen an argument as to why I should give it up now or maybe even in the future. I don't see it happening the way that you envision it. It's pie in the sky thinking you got there.
Well, it's backed up by every other country that's done it around the world, as well as individual states and counties in the US that have enacted gun control and also, and seen a drop in a lot of the violent crime. Even the ones like Chicago that still have a lot of violent crime, the guns come in from out of state, meaning that you need a top-down federal or at least all states to be regulating guns the same way in order to change the level of violence in the US. So that's an argument, right?
I don't know, man. Again, the restriction to own guns is curtailed in Illinois to the point where the criminals have the upper hand just by owning a gun, because the average citizen is much harder to have a license to carry one. So when you're out and about, you are less protected. It is the gangs that run the streets there. The regulations
and they get their
don't
guns
help.
from out of state.
So right. So what you like, it's a global thing. Like I could see your argument making sense if America were to be the last country to own guns. If we were to go across the world like the powerhouse we are and completely change everybody's government and take away all of their guns, I could see this being an argument. I don't see that ever happening though.
Well, so that could be true if there was a country on either side of the US that had easy access to guns, but Mexico is incredibly restrictive to their guns. That's why they import a lot from the US. And Canada's fairly restrictive as well. That's why they import a lot from the US. Now, you can bring them in shipping containers, but again, there's a massive industry already set up to detect things in shipping containers that shouldn't be there, like drugs. So, guns are a lot easier to find than drugs. Drugs aren't ferrous. On top of that, the actual creation of guns within the US can't be done in like your bathtub, like a meth lab. It requires heavy machinery, very good knowledge, even very complicated 3D printers, and then you get an unreliable gun out of that 3D printer. Like, this is an easy thing to restrict compared to all the other things that we restrict that still make their way into the US.
Yeah, I think restrictions could be put in place, but it's just not gonna, like you're trying to it's playing the mole game where you're trying to pop down one mole, another one's going to pop up. What you'd like to do is nuke the whole system, and I don't see that happening at all.
So let's play the mole game, right?
Yeah.
Have you played Pokemon?
Yeah, the first 150, I could probably name them all.
Yeah, cool. So, Doug Trio, right? That's 3 Digletts.
Yes.
Yeah. Doug Trio pops up. You push down that Doug Trio and a Diglett pops up, right? Which one's going to be easy to beat, the Doug Trio or the Diglett?
Right, but the point, yeah, that's a nice straw man. That's a nice straw man. Okay, I think every time you pop one down, another one's going to pop up. I don't think any of them are going to be any easier. They're just going to be in different areas, and they may hide until they evolve into a Doug Trio, and you don't realize you have more Doug Trios than Digletts because you've been so focused on the one. You're going to get many other Digletts popping up all over the place. They're going to grow into Doug Trios.
I don't think so, because that hasn't happened worldwide. Like, Australia has a fairly decent specialized manufacturing metal industry. We're not that big of a manufacturer anymore, but we can get access to all the things needed to create a lot of firearms, right? We have a lot of 3D printers coming online now in Australia. Like, it's another big industry. I think my brother-in-law bought one the other day. We have all of these things. We also have an extremely big coastline. So it's, difficult, but not that difficult to land a boat with a heap of guns on it from, somewhere in Southeast Asia onto the Australian coast. So we have all of these ways that you're saying guns can get into the US, but it's not happening in Australia, right? Even though we have, like, as you pointed out, we still have lots of crime here, right? We still have lots of criminals, lots of drugs. And then the other point is that you pop down the guns and the hammers and the knives pop up, right? But again, 13 times less likely to die if you present to an emergency ward with a stabbing than if you get shot. So I'd rather, like, as many people get stabbed as get shot, because more people are going to survive. Same with the suicides. You're more likely to survive a suicide attempt if you use pills, hangings, slit your wrists, any of those sorts of things. You're more likely to survive and get help for what could be an acute condition. So yeah, you're popping down the guns and you're popping up everything else, but that everything else is less likely to kill you than the guns.
Okay. Yeah, that maybe that could be the case, but it's going to have to be an overreaching, completely worldwide thing to do what you want.
All right, if you guys are getting close to wanting to wrap it up, you guys let me know, and then we'll do closing.
Yeah, we could do closings.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
All right, I will say, I did look it up. I guess the number one cause of the number one method of suicide in Australia is hanging. Number two is still guns. Whatever that's worth. I guess his point is still interesting because maybe they weren't all reported. All right, I think it goes dogs first and then Demonstryde, correct?
Yep.
All right, dogs, take it away.
So for my closing arguments, I think I'm going to put out a few just logical arguments, really simple. So suicide by non-firearm related means has a low rate of death comparatively. So I think it's something like 85% of people who attempt suicide with a gun are successful. It's something like 50% of suicides in the US happen with guns, despite it only being somewhere around the 6% of attempts. So people who survive an attempt often get help. A lot of the reasons for attempts can be due to acute depression or anxiety or alcohol or drug use, right? All of these things can be solved. The person can go on and live a pretty good life after, if they get that help. So it would make sense that reducing the death rate of suicides by reducing the most violent successful means would mean that more people would survive suicides, get their help, and then lead productive lives after. Now, I think that's a good for society. The next one would be gang members. So gang members need firearms. The only way to legally get the only way to access a firearm from the manufacturer in the US is through a legal purchase. After that, the gang members can get the firearms off whoever legally purchases it. So whoever that middleman is should be restricted so that these guns can't be funneled from manufacturer to gang members to allow for the continued horrible, violent gang crime and, in some cases, mass shootings that happen in the US. And the last one is for the police. So guns increase a background threat. It's called a force multiplier. This means that in every instance, the police need to anticipate that there will be a gun involved. This means that the police will be faster to act aggressively and potentially act in a deadly manner, we'll put it that way, towards anyone they come across in any potentially violent situation, which means the police are less successful. The civilian opinion of police in the US is lower, and the police are more likely to kill more people, which is, I think, something we can all agree should be stopped or at least slowed down. So these are just three basic logical arguments for why the guns in the US should be restricted from the manufacturer to the legal purchaser to either reduce the type of guns, so no more fast fire rate, large magazine, long arms, no more pistols, none of that sort of stuff. Or they should just be, so regulated that it's so hard for a citizen to just be able to walk in, get a gun, keep it in their cupboard and live their life, potential threat to the rest of society. That'll do me.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, go ahead, Demonstryde.
All right. The problem with relying on police to protect yourself is they're not going to be there when you need them to be. We live in America. It's a dangerous place. People are dangerous. Dogs here wants to change our constitution forcefully. He wants to change the American culture without having ever been a part of it. He wants the government to tell you what you can do or you can't do. I don't feel that these are American ways or cultures, and I would say more people need to know their rights. They need to have better training. I think there are things that we can change. I think we've expounded on those here. Yeah, I guess lock your shit up if you want to be responsible. Does anybody have that'll be the end of that. Thank you, dogs. Does anybody have links they want to send out or anything they'd like to say?
I do have a couple questions if you guys want to go through them real fast. There's just a couple though.
Yeah, cool.
All right, cool. Let's see here. I got Shane says, why do you think more regulations would help when 93% of guns used in crimes are obtained illegally?
Because they need to obtain them illegally from someone who's obtained them legally. So there needs to be a point where you can cut off the supply. And since criminals aren't going to comply with the regulations, you need to find a way to regulate it for the normal person. And what I suggest is a set of regulations that would allow people like Demonstryde to keep their guns for a period of time until eventually the black market is reduced to the point where Demonstryde can give up his gun, knowing that the chances of him having to ever use it or the criminals having guns is really, 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 really low.
Demonstryde, you got anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, just I don't think I'd ever give up my gun with the thought that other criminals do still have access to it. I think that's going to be the hardest thing for responsible gun owners to do. It's not. I mean, there's a multitude of things why I have a gun. I just don't see the change happening.
Okay. Let me see. I guess I'll ask this one. Kind of funny. Again, Shane wants to know, why are you so much calmer and more polite in this debate than normal?
Because it's one-on-one. So I don't have to be aggressive to be heard or answer a question. I'm not being interrupted. So I just try to match other people's energy or the energy of the Discord server.
That's a lie. That's a lie.
Yeah,
you come in there to yell at everybody.
I'm proud of you, though. I'm proud of you.
Most people.
So, okay, I'll ask a question. So, what's your so it's Australia's burglary rate is 911 per 100,000, the third highest in the entire world. U.S. burglary rate is 527 per 100,000, just under or just over half of that. Number 15 out of the 85 countries with available data. So, combining this with other data, it is statistically shown that people are significantly less likely to invade a house when they think there could be a gun in the house. So what say you to the importance of gun ownership being a deterrent to burglary and home invasion?
Yeah, I'd say that guns may reduce burglary and home invasion, but Australia doesn't have this problem of people's homes being invaded and then the people being harmed. So until there's actual harm to the people that are in those homes, until that happens, then I don't see a need for a gun.
So after they've been harmed, they'd need a gun.
No, what I mean is like society-wide. If we see an increase in statistics where people are breaking into homes, burglarizing, and then harming or killing the occupants, then I'd say, okay, well, maybe there's some need for defensive guns. But until that sort of starts increasing and becomes a problem, it's literally just loss of some things. And on top of that, in Australia, burglary is just going into a home unlawfully and like rooting through it. But in the US, it's committing a felony within that home. So there could even just
Breaking
be
and entering, yeah.
a statistical. Yeah, that it could be a statistical difference that's also partially based on just a definition of burglary in each country.
You guys got the third most in the world, man. Get your stuff together. All right, we got another question here. 1,123 people died from road crashes in Australia in 2021. How many deaths are too many before Australia bans cars?
Well, you need cars to, just do things day to day. Like for the economy to keep moving, for people to keep jobs, you require cars. You don't require guns for that.
What if I
we're not going
require
to
a
ban
gun to hunt?
cars because
What if I have to
yeah,
eat
well
and I
then in
have to
Australia
hunt
you
my
can
food?
still get a gun. In Australia, you can still get access to a gun for that.
So technically, if you wanted to commit a crime in Australia, you would just say you want to hunt.
There's more than that. You've got to get a license, go through a waiting period for the firearm. You've got to do training. You've got to have restrictions on what type of firearm you can get. Like my mate's got a 30-06 pump action rifle,
What a terrorist.
and that's his biggest gun. So his magazine capacity is capped at, I think, 5 rounds. So all of that together means that his gun is specifically meant for, hunting.
Gotcha.
And he
That
has
makes
to go
sense.
through a whole heap of hoops to get it.
Yeah. I'm just curious because how did you guys get the guns back? You did like a mandatory gun buyback program or something like that, I think. Because how would you
Well, it wasn't.
how are you
It was,
suggesting there's 1.3 billion guns on the lower end of the projection in America? So what are you suggesting?
sure. So I think, yeah, you can have amnesties, you can have gun buybacks, you can have when police stop or enter any home, they have the ability to seize all firearms until the owner has been shown to registered with firearm laws. You can have all of those and it'll just keep whittling away, so long as the supply isn't replenishing it all the time. So that's why you need the restrictions on legal purchases.
Right, but we have protections in the Constitution to stop from being our rights trampled on. Like what you're saying is you want us to change the Constitution and the amendments, the things that give us our freedoms, because feelings.
No, because of data, statistics, because of logical inferences, because of the facts that people keep dying in the US from gun-related deaths.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was say people die from all things. You're pointing at guns and saying that if we get rid of guns, we're going to stop all violent crimes.
No.
Okay. It felt like that.
Do you need a hammer? Do you need a hammer if you're a builder? Yeah, and building is important in the economy, right?
Yes.
Like for society to keep going, you need builders, you need hammers. You don't need that with guns. That's the difference between guns and all these other things. Like you need a chef's knife.
Right, but guns are protections for people.
In a restaurant.
Like gun is a protection for somebody, like a security guard even. Should they not have protection?
No, security guards can because they have a pressing need and they also have a whole lot of regulations around it. But they shouldn't have it at their home. They should have it at their depot. They should go pick up the firearm, make sure it's safe, make sure it's loaded, be accountable for every round that goes into that firearm, and then go off to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'm the security guard of my home. So I need my
security
gun
guards
here.
need them because their job specifically makes them a target of crime. Whereas your home doesn't specifically do that. You can just install better locks, make sure your windows have crime safe.
Those are just deterrents.
Shutters on.
Not working in Australia, bro. I think there's a couple more questions.
It is because we don't have the violence attached to our burglary. That's the difference.
So one question is one of the main and primary arguments in the United States for gun ownership is that it's considered the great equalizer for women. So it helps to deter physical assault and rape. So what do you say to that again, comparing it to Australia having a higher per capita percentage of rape?
So I'm going to paint you a little picture, like a story, okay? You're a woman, you're walking home late at night, and someone jumps out to assault you, right? And you've got a gun. You think, this is great. I can pull my gun out and I can shoot him, and I'll get away scot-free. I'll be fine. What happens is the person who jumps out to assault you does so in such a way that they can get to you before you pull that gun out. And then there's suddenly someone who's trying to assault you that has access to your firearm as well. That's the big problem.
Yeah,
In Australia,
that's something
our
that you need to
rape
train for is gun
statistics are high.
retention. Mhm. Having your head on a swivel, if you are wearing a gun, you are more likely to notice, your surroundings. Gun retention's one of the things you should train for if you're carrying a gun. I agree.
Was your
And you don't.
response basically like that people are just gonna get raped anyway? Like I'm like the question is like it's considered the great equalizer for women because they're able to fight off a much more physically dominant aggressor by having a gun, and over like 6 million crimes a year is prevented with guns, and 95% of the
That's
time
a
they're not. 95% of the time the gun's not shot.
So there's two things there. The first thing is that women can't always effectively use that firearm, which means that instead of it just being the potential for an assault, which could be stopped, it's now an assault and probable homicide. Because if you've got someone's gun, they've just tried to shoot you and you've just assaulted them, you may as well just shoot them, right? And that's one problem. The second one is this, what is it? The defensive gun use. That's a CLEC study, K-L-E-C-K. I've read that study, and what it is a survey of Americans. And that survey of Americans is, hey, did you use your gun defensively? And the people said, yeah, I used my gun defensively, even though in quite a lot of those cases I was on a Discord call with someone and they said, I'm going to come kill you. And the person on the Discord call said, no, you can't because I've got a gun. And then they say, oh, and then they in the Discord call, and that's considered defensive gun use in a CLEC study. So that CLEC study is just bullcrap.
All right, brother. We got a couple more. I mean, I think when I said like there's way more rape over there and guns help prevent rape here, you said, oh, well, it may not always help prevent rape. So I don't know. But
I explain the difference between the rape statistics. It's the violence versus non-violent.
Rape is pretty violent.
Yeah, I was going to say it's bad either way.
So I have a question for dogs.
Like non-consent rape, and then you have violent rape, which is forcefully, raping someone compared to just not gaining their consent. Someone is unconscious and you have sex with them, or they're extremely drunk and you have sex with them. That's also considered rape.
Both are higher in Australia.
But a woman who's unconscious can't pull out a gun to stop that.
Yeah, but it's okay. Do you believe that police should have guns when the people do not? What about at a point when they are totally eliminated from the public? Should cops have them still?
Yeah, of course.
Why?
Thanks.
Because the police have to deal with some situations in which guns are required. Same with security guards. It's inherent to their job.
What if the criminal tackles that cop and has access to his gun now?
Well, there's usually other cops around them with guns who are trained for that situation.
More guns. I agree. We need more guns.
I just want you to know, dogs, man, like you're never gonna get my KS-57. Like never. So
I don't really
all right, next question.
So I'm looking at the violent crime rate.
You just can't have it. That's all I'm saying.
For rapes.
I want to correct a couple things too, by the way. There's the biggest weapon we can get 50 caliber.
Just wait a second. Just wait a second. Violent crime rapes on this Nation Master, 6,378 per 100,000, ranked 6th for Australia. And for the US, it's 84,767, which is ranked 1st, 13 times more than Australia for violent crime rape.
Okay. So I would just want to say that you were asking like about the whole military threat and stuff. Like, what's the biggest type of weapon? He said 7.62 or maybe 5.56. Like, I have 7.62. You can get 50 caliber weapons in America. I mean, 50 caliber quite literally would go right through the concrete wall. Yes. But here's another question. A government for the people, by the people, and of the people, which is militarized by the people, gets so large and so militarized it becomes tyrannical. It is the duty of the people to regulate said government. When it becomes tyrannical, it is to be removed and replaced by one which will abide by the rules set forth in the Constitution, which is written for such a purpose. It's a lengthy question. To create boundaries for said government to remain within. How exactly are the people supposed to remove this tyrannical government if they don't have any defense against it? Whatever weaponry the government has, the people have the right to possess equal and equivalent weaponry as to not create a tyrannical government. How is this possible if the people are unable to arm themselves?
So historically, we've seen this done through outside intervention and through military intervention within the country. So if there was a tyrannical government within the US, the only real way to effectively fight against them would be to get the armed forces on the side of the citizenry rather than the tyrannical despotic ruler. That's literally the only way it could happen outside of like a United Nations effort to invade America.
Okay.
But I think the best
So,
bet would just be stop undermining democracy.
Like you would like to do.
Yeah.
You want to
I
make the
mean,
change
No,
to the
I've
Constitution
never said
without
that I should
properly.
I never
Well,
said
the
that I
people
wanted
of-
to do it unilaterally.
And if the people disagree with you, like we currently do, it
Then
seems
they
you
disagree
would
with
like
me.
to
It's
take
a
it from us.
democracy. I want democracy. I want democracy. I don't want to come in and force your country to change. I want to try to change the culture through discourse. And then from there, the population can change the country on like a governmental level.
I think we've spoken pretty loudly in response to that request just the last 3 years when people started flirting with the idea and bought more guns than in any time in modern history. So I think the people have spoken pretty unequivocally as to what their stance is here about the guns, dogs. I don't think they're going anywhere, man. So do you agree the
Doesn't
next
mean I
best
can't
thing
think
would
either
be
way.
that people are trained and responsible gun owners, and that in that situation that would actually be a deterrent of crime and the abuse of weapons and stuff like that? Because if say you can't take the weapons, you agree that would be the next best thing.
Yeah, of course. There's always things that can be the next best thing. But like, I'm going to keep advocating for what I think will actually solve the problem instead of maybe just put a little band-aid on it.
All right, that's the only
Because
questions
like,
I
what's
see.
the difference between if someone's trained to properly use a firearm, be safe with it, and then one day, like their wife cheats on them and they come home, they find that out, and then they find that their neighbor down the road is cheated on, that guy can snap. He's a
Yeah,
responsible
but he
gun
could use
owner, and
scissors
next
to
minute,
stab her to death,
he's a
just like in
family
Minority
annihilator,
Report.
right?
Yeah. If
And then
somebody's
maybe-
gonna
13
if somebody's
times
gonna
less
murder
likely
somebody,
to
they're gonna
die.
murder somebody regardless of the tool they're gonna use. The fact that they decided to murder the person is the wrong. It's not what tool they use.
13 times less likely to die from a stabbing than
The person down the street, the neighbor, could also just have a gun. Like I said, we have half the burglaries, half the breaking and enterings, and they did a survey of all the felons, and they said, "Yeah, I mean, I don't go into houses if anyone's home because it's very likely they have a gun." They wouldn't think that in Australia, right? They'd be like, "He's in the house, but what's he gonna do?"
Mhm.
So
But
pretty simple.
we also
concept.
don't have a lot of violent crime in general in Australia. So these burglaries, sure, they're happening, but in the exact same as the US, they're happening when people aren't home.
Okay.
Gotcha. Is that all the
Oh man,
questions?
I don't see any more. The only one I see is dogs. You realize we live in a republic. I pledge allegiance to the republic.
All right. So this is something I know we've argued
Just reading the
about.
question.
It'll
man.
take me 2 seconds, okay? So, well, we've argued about this before, Witsit, haven't we? The republic and the
Yeah,
democracy,
you got destroyed.
the
Yeah.
distinction between the two. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a republic is just that there is representatives, and a constitutional republic is that there's representatives that uphold the constitution. If these representatives are voted in by the people, it's a democratic republic. If the representatives are given that position by other representatives, then it would be a non-democratic republic. So America is actually a democratic constitutional republic because the American
Given
people
the
can vote
power.
for their leadership.
I don't get given the power from other representatives. Who gave those representatives the power?
Well, it's the way China works, right? So in China, they had their elected leader and then it became a republic, but the democratic part of it was removed. The people no longer vote in their representatives. Other representatives within that government elect other representatives. So they say, hey, you, I'm going to put you onto, you're going to be part of the CCP, leadership now. That's how it works. So the people no longer have a say. It's no longer a democracy. Same with, I think, North Korea.
What would it be called if it was just majority rules? Just majority rules. What's that called?
What was the term that I used last time? It was something like a direct democracy.
Okay. All right, cool. I don't want to get into a debate with you, but I am proud of you for being chill. You were very polite in the conversation. I didn't even have to do anything. I was just here, honestly. So that was cool. Maybe you're just intimidated. I'm just kidding. I do appreciate it. So I guess you guys are good unless you guys want to say any final things or show any final things.
Yeah, I'm fine here. I would just like people to Witsit, if you have links you want to put out or where they can find you at. You can find me at medicinalmass.com or just search YouTube for Demonstryde.
Nice. Yep. And I'm Witsitgetsit on YouTube. Dogs.
Yeah, I got nothing. I'm going to be in a house full of too much trash for the rest of the day, trying to clear it out. So if you want to come to Australia and find me in a hoarder house and give me a hand for an hour, then that'd be great.
Nice. Nice.
Thanks so much for coming, guys.
Go to Tartaria Cosmology.
Yeah, absolutely. Cosmology Tartaria on Discord. I should put a link up for that after. If you watch the stream, it'll pop up. Thanks for moderating with it. This was really fun.
Yeah, of course.
Later.
All right, later.
Yeah, it was good. Bye.
Later.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm going to put a link in the description for the Discord. You can join. We talk about everything from flat Earth to concave Earth to just about anything. Thanks for coming. It's been great.